If you find Unfound informative, please support this podcast at Patreon, YouTube, or PayPal. Donald Raye Atkins II, Donnie to those who loved him most, was a 35-year-old from West Monroe, Louisiana. He had recently gotten out of prison, but seemed to finally be on the right track. In the late morning of September 2nd, 2018, Donnie allegedly got dressed in nice clothes and walked out of a friend's home where Donnie had stayed the night before. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Denzel, and this is Unfound. Recently, in the Facebook discussion group, I was asked the following question. How can these people who obviously caused these disappearances just walk around like nothing happened? How do they live with themselves? The question is easy for me to answer, especially since I am a cynic regarding human nature to the point of being a misanthrope. The answer? These people have no consciences. Moreover, I really do believe these people feel justified in what they did. And these people do not believe they should have to pay for something that they feel was moral, despite it being illegal. Yet none of us should be too quick to want these people prosecuted. We have examples from Unfound's own catalog where taking things to court doesn't exactly necessarily resolve anything. Remember Angie Yarnell. Her husband spent 4 years in jail for causing her disappearance. Yet she is still missing, and he can never be tried again. And very recently, due to what I would call a rushed prosecution, Michael Turney was acquitted of all charges in Alyssa Turney's disappearance. He also will never have to answer for what he might have done to her. Well, with the disappearance of Donnie Atkins, a group was charged with his disappearance in 2020. Then everything was dropped a few months later. What should we make of these trials and tribulations? And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Linez's website, charleyproject.org. Maybe Donnie Atkins' childhood years should have been an indication of what was to come. He was raised in an undisciplined house, yet Donnie still managed to do well in school. Donnie got along well with women despite having a mother who was an alcoholic. Yes, he had an older sister who looked out for him, but she had her own life to lead. This all eventually caught up with Donnie. Multiple DUIs, even one in which he lost his spleen in a wreck. Lots of time in prison. No career, no money. Yet in the months leading up to his disappearance, Donnie had gotten his first good job, and he seemed to be doing very well at it. So, the weekend, starting with Friday, August 31st, 2015, Donnie had wanted to go to his sister Carmen's to hang out. However, Carmen had a party planned for a bunch of children, so she thought it best that Donnie come over some other time. Seemingly, Donnie went instead to his friend Rob's. There, according to what Rob said later, Donnie stayed until late Sunday morning, September 2nd. At that point, Donnie, dressed in quote-unquote nice clothes, walked out of Rob's house. Rob had no idea where Donnie was going. He was never seen again. Not until September 9th, a week later, did anyone, including Rob, notice that Donnie was missing. Months later, due to a called-in tip, multiple people were charged with Donnie's disappearance. However, everything was eventually dropped. There is the saying, better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Whereas I don't think that can be said about trials involving disappearances. It very well may be better to never go into a courtroom until that missing person is found deceased. Or do you think prosecutors should take more chances? Contemplate that as you also try to answer these 3 specific questions about Donnie's disappearance. Number 1, can Rob be ruled out as a suspect, given that more than $100 was found in Donnie's possessions left at Rob's house? Number 2, should the main concern in this disappearance be Donnie's deteriorating state of mind, as shown by the texts between him and a girlfriend in the early morning hours of September 2nd? And number 3, what are we to make of someone continuing to check Donnie's voicemail weeks after his disappearance? Donnie's family believes the prosecution was on the right track when it came to the conclusion that Donnie had been murdered. The guest for this episode is Donnie's sister, Carmen Spillers. Unfound news. Christopher Miller, the subject of an Unfound Now episode, was found deceased this past week. If you'll remember, he ran off after getting pulled over by police in Wisconsin. His remains were found in an abandoned house 5 miles away from his last sighted location. Next, here's the upcoming schedule for Unfound. Next Friday, August 25th, update episode number 15. There's a lot to cover. September 1st, the 7th anniversary episode. Then we will get back to newly featured disappearances on September 8th. Finally, I will be recording a very special episode of Unfound within the next couple of weeks. This will be meant for Patreon and YouTube supporters. What will be the topic? I will discuss all of Unfound's disappearances which have been somewhat resolved. I've never done this before. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the sister of Donnie Atkins, Carmen Spillers. Carmen, welcome to Unfound.
Hi, Ed. Glad to be here.
And good to have you. The listeners probably know we're covering another disappearance from Louisiana. I'm going to say that Louisiana is probably easily in the top 10 of states where we've covered disappearances. So we're visiting Louisiana, of course, unfortunately. Again, Carmen, thank you for joining me, and everybody needs to know we're doing this interview on August 4th of 2023. Let's start here, as we usually do when I have family members on. Just tell the listeners a little bit about your family. Of course, you're Donnie's sister. What was it like growing up with him? Maybe you want to talk about other siblings. Talk about the Atkins/Spillers family growing up.
Sure. It was just me and my brother. I'm the oldest sibling. He was my baby brother. There's almost 5 years between us. So he was my baby. I took care of him a lot. My mom was a single mom at some points of us growing up. So there was, I took on a lot of the responsibilities of taking care of him. So we had a really close bond. He kind of looked at me as like a mom figure as well, even growing up. So we just did, it was a good relationship.
Okay. Would you say that, just looking at your personality, his personality, you two very different, two very similar? Were you like maybe more like one of your parents than he was? How would you explain all that?
I would say we were definitely polar opposites.
Oh, okay.
I was the strong one. He was the baby in all sense that he could do no wrong.
Oh my.
So within the sibling world, that kind of leaves a bit of resentment. And then, of course, as you get older, you don't want your little brother tagging along with you. So there was that. He had a really big heart, would do anything for anybody. And I took the role as the protector of not only him, but my mom as well.
Yeah. Okay. As the listeners know, I was raised an only child. I ended up having 2 biological brothers and a biological sister. But 5 years, it's, the way I look at it, it's kind of close. You're kind of close in age. If you're 10, he's 5. You're 15, he's 10. But like school-wise, you'd be like going out. Schools are usually divided up into like years of 5. So I guess you never maybe were in the same school building together, even though otherwise you were 2 kind of close in age.
Right. No, we were never in school together. By the time he would start, I had already started school. He was at home. And then when he would hit elementary, I was already in the junior high phase. And same thing with high school. And, yeah.
Okay. Would you, close to your parents, both of you very close to your parents growing up? What would you say about that?
Our mom, for sure, she was the constant in our lives. My brother and I both share different fathers.
Oh, okay.
Until my mom married. We were, I think I was 9 and Donnie was 4, maybe 5. Sam, and he became the constant father figure in our lives until our parents divorced, like 15 years after the fact. But he still remained our dad for both of us.
Okay.
When they divorced, I went with mom. Don went with mom, and I went with dad. So we didn't ever consider him a stepdad because he was the constant father figure.
Okay. Obviously that split up could not have gone well for both of you. You didn't feel probably too good about that, one having to go with one having to go with the other?
It was our choice.
Oh, okay.
And that was where some of the differences came in for me and Don. Our mom was a functioning alcoholic. She always worked, but she was an alcoholic. We didn't learn that term until we were way older. Functioning alcoholic, because when you're raised with something, it's just that's your norm. But that ultimately is what was the demise of any relationship that she had, and that included one with my dad. But she had a lot of demons in her life that she was battling, which I later learned also spilled off onto my brother because he became an alcoholic. So he was 12, 13 when my mom and dad divorced, and he chose mom because of the freedom. He could do whatever he wanted without any consequences. Dad was more of the punisher. I didn't like that lifestyle with my mom, so I chose the more stable one.
Yeah.
And that just kind of escalated things for my brother, being young, being able to come and go as he pleases, get in with friends, and I guess the bad groups. Mom was busy doing her thing with just working, and her extracurricular activity was drinking. So.
Right. It's one of those things as kids want the parent that's lack maybe on the discipline, and that's maybe decent in the short run, but in the long run, often that doesn't work out too well.
No, it doesn't. Kids need discipline, structure. When you're a kid, you think you don't need those things.
Yes,
but
right.
That's not the case, and so that started our divide from there. But
okay, when did that happen? How old were you two?
I want to say, I think Don was, I want to say around anywhere 11, 12, and I was probably 15. 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there.
Okay.
This seems like a lifetime ago.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to. Okay. Thank you for all of that. Let's move on to Donnie himself. You said that you two were polar opposites. Do you mean like personality and interests and all of those things, or how do you mean?
Yes, personalities, interests. I was, I guess just because I took on the role as when I was a child as the protector for my mom and my brother. I was what people say, wise beyond my years for being so young. I just always, taking care of my mom, through, the drinking, making sure my brother was fed and clothed and ready for school, all that kind of stuff. So where I took on responsibilities really young, he was able to be more of a kid. And so I think that's where I see the differences from. He just lived carefree, and I lived a very worried childhood.
Okay, gotcha. And once you got split up like this, him going with your mother, you going with your father, how often did you see each other? Did you two talk very much? How was it?
Oh, yeah. So we lived in the same town, and we were just like a few houses from each other, so it wasn't that I didn't never see them. And like I said, they always relied on me, they as in my mom and my brother, so anytime anything went wrong, they called me, and I was there to the rescue, or felt I needed to be, because that was my role, just to protect them both and be the fixer.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So, regarding Donnie, what were his interests? He's living with your mother by himself, getting into his teen years. Was he into sports? Was he into cars? What music? Do you have any kind of interests like that?
Yeah, all of the above. He played football in high school. He was on the local BMX team. He did the BMX bikes. He started when he was like 8. Wow. He really loved that. He loved small engine repair. Of course, when he got a little older into cars, he enjoyed the bigger engines. He loved all that. He's super smart. The kid was super smart.
Okay.
He was a natural at it.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah, he was. All
right. And what about school? How did he do in school? Did he graduate high school? What can you say about that?
He did. He graduated high school. It goes back to him just being smart. He was just one of those people who didn't need to study. He didn't need to show up for class. He could just read the text, walk in for the test, and ace it. He was a 4.0 student with little to no effort.
Wow. That's saying you got to, and given that how you've set this all up, Carmen, that's certainly an accomplishment, given, I guess the kind of the home life that was going on with his mother. And like you said, the lack of discipline and everything. That's certainly an accomplishment.
Yeah, and not to take anything away from our mom, she was a really great mom. She didn't lack in love by any means. She just, she was a young mom. She had me when she was 16. So she didn't know how to be a mom, how to nurture when she was still a kid. And I only know that now because, me coming up through my kids and understanding her, I did have a lot of resentment for her, and Donnie did too. I was able to heal mine because I was older and I had kids, so I was better able to understand that. He still struggled with it, because some things you just don't know unless you experience them yourself. As being a parent, I was able to understand her struggles. I mean, she was young and it was not ready to be responsible for another human. And then the same thing when she had my brother, she was 20, so she just wasn't quite ready. But she did the best that she could.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So Donnie is in school. What about relationships? Of course, in a little bit we're going to be talking about Christy, but Of course, we have to remember that he was into his 30s before he went missing. So,
Right.
what about girlfriends in high school, women in his 20s? What can you say about his interest there, relationships?
Oh yeah, he was smooth. He was a ladies' man.
Okay.
He was. He was a very good-looking guy. He respected women. He opened doors. Pulled out chairs. He was an absolute gentleman. That's because he had a big heart. He wouldn't hurt a fly. That was just his character. He just was a kind, loving soul, and he was a big guy. So girls just flocked to him, and he had no shortage of girlfriends.
Okay. Then was he ever married, and did he have any children?
He was never married. He never had any children.
Okay, so he was playing the field all that time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he was always searching for someone. It just never worked out with anybody. He had a lifelong friend where they always thought that they would end up together, but it was just circumstancing and timing. They just never did.
Okay. All right, very good. How about work? Well, did he take any higher education classes after high school, or did he go right into the workforce? What did he do there? Of course, we're going to talk about he did some jail time and some things, but what about earning money?
He did. He had several jobs. He did go to college. He actually, on his academic merit, was able to get a 4-year scholarship. He went to a Texas university, and that goes back to when I was saying how smart he was. I don't know if alcoholism really is in the genes or not. Some people say yes, some people say no, but he was an alcoholic. He had demons in him. I don't really know what they were. Later we learned that his biological side of his family does have mental health issues. We never really knew the severity of it until, of course, after my brother's disappearance and connecting with that family, getting to know more about that. But that may have helped him in his younger years and even in his 20s, 30s, if he better understood his own struggles, but
sure.
It's hindsight. But he self-medicated with alcohol. But he did, like I said, when he was super smart and didn't have to try, he aced it. He ended up losing his scholarship going into his sophomore year because of DWIs and going to jail. He took his final exams in jail and aced them. But he ended up doing time where he couldn't maintain his school.
And what about, so he dropped out, what did he do for money? What did he do for work, like in his 20s? What was he doing?
He had several jobs, but within that time too, he was also, I don't remember exactly the time framing, but he was in jail several times for DUIs. And I know, and not just that, he also went to several rehabilitation clinics. He was clean for 4 years. He was in a program called Teen Challenge that worked really great for him. But once he got out on his own, it's like stresses was something he couldn't handle. He didn't have the tools to handle them. Like someone that didn't have a dependency on something. As soon as things got stressful, he did turn to alcohol, and then it all just kind of went downhill from there.
I guess what you're saying is it's hard to keep jobs like that if you're always going back to jail for DUIs or for whatever other issues. It's hard to save any money or anything like that, right?
Right. He did try. He would do really well. He had bought a place at one time, but it's just the natural struggles of just adult life just would get to him. I mean, it would break him. Like, he just did not have the strong will to just keep pushing through the hard times. Yeah.
What were you, of course, I guess my impression, although I do not know you very well, Carmen, is that you haven't done some of the things that he did. So you being the older sister, kind of being a mentor, taking care of him as a child, did you ever talk to him about, for example, these repeated DUIs? What did he have to say about them? You know, of course, DUIs, you know, you can hurt a lot of people, you know, drinking and driving. What did he have to say about that if you ever spoke to him about that?
Oh yeah, all the time we did. It was me who always pushed him to go to rehab. I just couldn't ever connect with him or my mom regarding the drinking because I was never a drinker. I didn't like any substances. I think because what I took away from our childhood is what was role modeled to me. I didn't want any part of it. I had the opposite effect. I didn't want any part of it where my brother had, it was like candy for him. And I guess, you know, like a lot of teens, you know, when alcohol is just readily available for you, and or cigarettes or the marijuana, you just take advantage of it and share with your friends. For me, it was, no, I didn't want any part of it. I didn't want my friends to even know about it, that even existed in my life. Like, it was, I kept all of that taboo a secret, where my brother just, you know, he went with it. Not to say that was bad and any kids wouldn't, you know, let me steal a couple beers to go drink with my friends or this and that. He was just more drawn to that than I was. So I did talk to him a lot about it. And, he had a sadness in him that I didn't understand. All I knew at the time, because I didn't have the tools to really understand what he was going through, or even what my mom was going through. I just knew you don't need to be drinking. You need to get help. You know, you just need to get a job. Yeah. Pay your bills. Live a normal life is all that I knew how to help him with that. Now that I'm older and looking back, he needed way more. We all needed an education of what was going on. We didn't know. We just kept pushing, but he needed counseling. He needed a whole lot more.
And we have to remember something also, Carmen. It's not necessarily you have your own life. You know, you have your own life to lead. It's not like he is your son or anything. You have your own responsibilities, and he's a grown man. I mean, he's 18, 19, into his 20s doing these things. I mean, really, what can you do? You know, you can talk to him, but, you know, it's not necessarily your responsibility. You have your own life to lead, you know, and your own relationships and work and education and everything else. But so you can only do so much, right?
Right. That is, yeah, that's what normally someone would say. But when you're in the thick of it, my mom and my brother, for the longest time, that me taking care of them was just what I did. Even when I had kids, it wasn't anything unusual for my brother to call me at 2 a.m. because he needed help. He had, gotten drunk and gotten beat up or jumped or something, and he needed help, and I'm loading up my baby and I'm going to get him. Same thing with my mom, at 12, a bar is calling me to come pick her up. I'm 12. But I did. I got in the vehicle and I went and picked her up. That was just the position I was put in. And I owned it. That was like my badge of honor, I guess, was taking care of them. And I did.
Yeah, please. Okay, thank you. Now, on that topic, you just kind of referenced it in passing there just a couple moments ago, that Donnie did live with you for a while. He actually lived under your roof for a while. When was this? How did that go? Maybe you want to talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he did. When things got really bad for him, he was a junior in high school. He was really drinking a lot at this point. My mom was overwhelmed. She didn't know how to handle him because he's a male, a young male, a lot of testosterone, a lot of anger towards her. So I married really young. I was blessed and actually found someone who understood me. And so my husband and I, we took him in. My brother, we were just newly married. So he stayed with us for about almost 2 years. It was through the rest of his junior year and through that summer. It's the start of his senior year, but it just became too much for our household because I was parenting him more than us being siblings.
Yep.
And me being young in my teens and him being in his teens, it did not, we were just butting heads. It was just very stressful. So my uncle had stepped in at that time, and my brother moved to New Orleans with him. And so he finished out some of his senior year because he did end up coming back and graduating from our hometown high school, West Monroe High School. So, but he was there for a short amount of time, which could be good or bad.
Was that the only time he ever lived with you? Did he ever live with you, like in his 20s into his 30s?
Oh, my brother lived with us on and on, on and off through his teens, through his disappearance.
Oh, he did. Okay. All right.
He did, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to this. So we know a little bit about Donnie. Has some struggles, alcohol struggles, even to the point of DUIs, getting caught, going to jail. Of course, that's going to be tough to get any sort of establishment in life. And we move on to this, though. He did have a health issue. Maybe this could have had to do with one of his drinking episodes. He lost his spleen in a car wreck. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yes, he was actually, his default was always me. Any emergency, he called me. Anytime he was in trouble, he called me. My phone number was like his social security number for people. So he was actually on the way out to our house, and he was just, it was one of his drunken spells, and I don't really remember exactly the particulars, but he was on the way out to our house, and he was speeding and hit a bump, and it threw him out. His truck flipped. I think the witnesses had said 5 or 6 times before it ejected him out of the back glass of the truck.
Oh my.
And they thought that at that time, when they seen his body fly and hit the road, that he was dead for sure. When they ran over there to him, and I believe this was like 3 a.m, all he could say was, call Bubba, and just kept repeating my phone number. That's what he called me. Repeating my phone number over and over again. And so they did call, and then the sheriff's department had came to the door, and I immediately had thought, because I'd always tried to prepare myself for when they would come knocking, that it would be that he had died or hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
But he didn't die. They just let me know that he was in a wreck in what hospital he was at. And we went to the hospital, and at that time, the doctor said they performed procedures on him without any pain medication or anything, because his blood alcohol level was so high, and he actually had cocaine in his body, that he wasn't feeling anything. And because of that wreck, he did lose his spleen.
Oh my goodness. All right. So
Yeah.
when was this? How old was he? What year was this? If you can remember, approximately.
Yeah. Gosh. Maybe 2005.
All right.
Somewhere in
So
there.
over 10 years before his disappearance.
Right.
Okay. And as we've talked about, of course, as listeners know, I have conversations, emails, other phone conversations with guests before they ever appear officially, and we do a recording. But, of course, losing your spleen can then make you even more susceptible to getting drunk, correct? Is that what you've told me? That's what you've learned?
Yes, absolutely. The doctors were very clear about his condition. So your spleen is, the way it was explained is your body's filter, and it can do its job at filtering alcohol for a normal person. But since you don't have a spleen, the alcohol is going straight into his blood system. So where it would take maybe somebody a few beers to get to that level of intoxication, for him, one beer would already put him over the limit. And it did. It absolutely did. It hit him really hard. And so, after that, of course, with anybody who's an alcoholic, he's had so many rock bottoms, and with every one of them, we thought, this is it. This is the turning point. This is where it's going to get good. And that was one of his rock bottoms. And he did. He was clean and sober for a while. It wasn't long that I was able to get him into that Teen Challenge program. And that program in itself is a year. And he spent another year in the program voluntary, and then it was, I wouldn't say quite a year after that, so I want to say it was maybe 3 years in all. He really was passionate. He had always had faith. He always was a Christian, to a fault also. That was one of his demons, because he could never get past the sinning part, in that you are forgiven for your sins. He took his sins really hard. He was really hard on himself about everything that would happen. But he didn't. He went in. It was a Christian-based ministry, rehab center, and he really took to that. He really took to helping. He had a gift of talking. He shared his testimony. He went around everywhere to help youth, just sharing his story and his troubles and how he, came back from them. And everything was great. He appeared to be doing very well, but he was really just a ticking time bomb.
Okay. And we have to remember, you stated in this particular crash in which his spleen eventually had to be taken out, he also wasn't just alcohol, it was cocaine as well?
There was, yes.
Okay. All right, maybe we'll come back to that a little later. Regarding the spleen, I'm not a doctor. Do you have to take any medication, to make up for what the spleen does in the body? Or is this something that a person can live without and not notice too much of a difference?
They can live without it. He was supposed to take precautions, as in taking care of himself, but he didn't really do anything. No, there wasn't. To answer your question about medications, He didn't need to take anything. Okay. He just needed to live a healthier lifestyle.
Okay, gotcha. All right, let's move on to this. Of course, you've talked about this jail time, and we're not going to go through every particular time he was in there, but how would you say, as we've learned here on Unfound, sometimes when mostly men go to jail, they make, the wrong kind of friends who they then meet up with once they're all out of jail. Did this happen for Donnie? What was he doing while he was in jail? How would you explain that? Did you ever go see him in jail? Did you visit him? What can you say?
I did go and see him all the time when he would be there. I really don't. I'm sure that he did make friends in jail. He always, we did talk about it, visits, and we're somewhat of a small town, so he would know some people from high school or just whatever would be in there too. But he said he always told me it was just best to keep your head down, just be quiet, don't stand out. That was the way that he kept to himself. Books, he loved books. He always did whatever he could to get out of general population, like your GED, even though he was a high school graduate, if you took the GED class, it gets you out of, I guess, the whatever situation you're in, maybe your cell or I don't really know how jail works, but he would take any class that was available. I think he, through his span of going to jail, he took the GED class like 4 times.
Wow. Okay.
But he would tell me he kept to himself. So to answer your question, did he make friends in there? I'm sure he did. I don't know, him and we didn't have the same circle of friends. Yeah. 1, our age difference, and 2, our lifestyles. We just did not run in the same circles at all.
Okay. And we have to understand this is important because my understanding is at the time of his disappearance, he had been out of jail for only 5 months.
Yes.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't even think it was quite 5 months, but yeah.
Okay. And we'll come back to that. All right. So he had a lot of jail time. And so now, as I mentioned kind of earlier, regarding women in his life, there is one we're going to mention. Her name is Christy. Who is she? How did they meet? We'll just keep it in very general terms here. How did they know each other? Was she a girlfriend? Was she around his age? What can you say about Christy? How well did you know her? Any of that?
No. Okay. Don he was staying with us when he was released out of jail, and a few weeks of him being out, he had come in one day and said, he had met someone. He was super excited about it. And we talked a little bit about it. And, where did you guys meet? He said mutual friends. He really likes her. He thought that I would be very accepting of her and I'd give my approval of her. He really thought really highly of her. She had 2 kids. She has a good job, sis. You really like her. She's a good girl, is what he'd say. I was like, okay. And then I can't really remember exactly how long the time span was before I did meet her for the first time. And I did meet her. She did seem nice. There wasn't any red flags. I didn't assume the worst of meeting someone for the first time. It made him happy. So all was good with that. He did call her his girlfriend. She did reciprocate and say that was his boyfriend. I don't think they weren't together very long before my brother disappeared. That I think they had probably troubles in the beginning and later finding out. But I had only physically met her twice while Donnie was seeing her.
Okay. How long would you say they knew each other at the time of his disappearance?
I think they met in June, so a few months.
Not long then. Just 3 months, 4 months, something like that maybe.
Yes.
Okay. Once again, understanding that you have your own life. Could you get any feel for how it was going after you met her? Did you have any feel for how it was going? Did Donnie ever say anything to you? Did you ever see them argue? Anything like that?
I never seen them argue because she had her own place. Don stayed with us for a few months after he got out of jail, and then he had gotten a job down south, so that's when he had left our house.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back into town, he was staying with her as their fights. I don't know of any fights other than one, which was in July, something about she had given him a trailer, some utility trailer, and I guess they had broken up or had some kind of fight to that. Mm-hmm. And she wanted the trailer back, and he said no because he had given it to me, and I think the sheriff's department was involved in it. He had actually brought the trailer out to my house and parked it while he went to his job down south, and I had told him that I didn't want any part of what was going on because she had called me about it, asking if the trailer was there, and I said yes. I said, but that's something you'll need to take up with Donnie because I don't know anything of what's going on. And that's when he called me and told me the situation. I told him I wasn't getting involved, and if it's hers, he needs to give it back. And they worked it out because the trailer ended up staying there. And then after Donnie's disappearance, a few months into it, this Christy had actually contacted me and wanted to bring me something. It ended up being the title to the trailer. She said it was the least that she could do to help out with Donnie's disappearance. Maybe I could sell it and, put the money towards the reward or something.
Okay. All right. And so just to be clear about something you brought up there, he actually lived with you in months not long before he disappeared.
Yeah.
All right. And how did that go? Being that now he's in his 30s and he's just gotten out of jail, how did that go?
It was, in the beginning, it was really exciting to have him home because we had been visiting him 1 weekend a month, and he was in a facility that was 3 hours away from us. So it was just nice. We were all excited to have Christmases and Thanksgivings together because it had been so long. My kids were super excited to have their uncle home. So everything was good. He was adjusting to just kind of everything. The phones. I remember the kids showing him Snapchat because he'd never seen that before. Yeah, it was just they were getting him set up on Facebook again. He was just ready to reconnect with everyone and just, start living a life of freedom. He was having some issues adjusting with, just being able to, get out of his bed and get food. And he was enjoying going to my son's football games. My oldest daughter was graduating at that time. It was her senior year, so we had a lot of things going on, and he was just overwhelmed with being a part of my middle daughter, her ring ceremony for her junior year to her senior year, and then my oldest daughter with her senior year. It was good. It was really good until it just kind of then became a lot because he just kind of started to become stagnant. So
he's living with you. You're saying, maybe it was time that he moved on. You'd said he'd gotten this job, I guess, outside of your area. What kind of job was it?
It was something with a independent contractor who does meter reading for the utility companies.
Okay.
It was a friend of his that he had known for a long time. I think they went to high school together. He was running a crew and was looking for people. So the timing was perfect because I was ready for him to get a job. It was time to start, being productive.
Right.
And so it was perfect timing. And so he did that. He went down south. We'd helped him out with the money because he needed gas and place to stay because there was an orientation and all that. And everything went great. He ended up getting the job, and he was gone for, I think, 3 weeks. And then he came back into town, and everything was going good working with them. Their next hitch contract was in Tennessee, And so he had left his truck at my house because he was riding with his boss to Tennessee, and that's where he had been.
Okay.
Was in Tennessee.
All right, so he's kind of living where the jobs were.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so he moves out of your place, but he doesn't necessarily, does he get his own place, like an apartment, or was it just because of the job that he couldn't do that?
Well, I think there are two factors. He wasn't out very long. He just was released in April. It was April 25th when I picked him up. So he was with me through, the end of April, May. June is when he got the job. It was like the end of June. But he come back late June, and in that time period is when he met Christy. So he was staying with her.
Okay.
And he was staying with Christy, and he was with Christy until he went and left for Tennessee. He left, I think it was late July. No, it was in August. It was sometime in August. I don't remember exactly. I think they left, because I wrote it down. Oh, okay, August 17th. He left for Tennessee.
Okay.
So he was in Tennessee for those couple of weeks. He came back. He left his truck at my house and then left out for Tennessee. And I talked to him. We talked over text and talked in phone calls. How was it going? So it was going good. He really enjoyed it. Tennessee was beautiful. He'd send me pictures of horses and stuff because they were walking the power lines, checking things. And then he had to come back into town to meet with his PO the Monday after I think it was after the 28th. I'll look at the calendar. But he came in and picked up his truck. It was either on the 28th or the 29th. I don't remember exactly what day. Because I remember I was outside that morning having my coffee before my kids went off to school.
Okay. And did you have any idea where he was headed with his truck?
Yes, he said he stopped, and Christy's the one that actually brought him to the house. So he had went, his boss had dropped him off at her house because they were dating. They were excited to see each other because he had been gone for a few weeks. And then she brought him out to the house before she needed to be to work. So it was early. I want to say it was like 6 in the morning. And he had coffee with me and said that he was getting his paperwork together because he needed to turn in his work information to his PO. He needed to pay his PO fine. And there was something with his driver's license. I don't know if he had lost it and he needed to get another one. He just had things he needed to do. So that was the plan. And so that was the last day that I had seen him physically.
All right. That's the last time you saw him before he went missing.
Yes.
Okay. And is it your belief that did you think he was going to be staying at Christie's during this time then? That's why he took his truck and she dropped him off to get it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And just remind everybody, of course, the accepted, disappearance date we're going by is approximately September 2nd, but what date was this?
He came in. It was either August 28th or 29th. I don't remember exactly. It was either that Tuesday or Wednesday because I knew that he came into town. The purpose of coming into town because he needed to meet with his PO officer on Monday, which would have been September the 3rd.
Okay. All right. So overall, given that he was living with you after you got out of jail, he gets this job. How were you feeling about your brother Donnie at the time? In late August of 2018. How are you feeling about his prospects, about his future?
Really good. Everything seemed to be going really good. My mom's birthday is August the 8th, so we had all went out to, we taken her to lunch and spent the day with her. It was a really good day. It was the last day all three of us were together. And then the job seemed to be going really good. He was super excited about it.
Okay, so you thought that maybe the rest of 2018 was going to be a pretty good year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Let's move up now to the day, guess we're going to call it the day of his disappearance. Not quite yet, but he contacted you on the morning, was it of September 1st or September 2nd? He wanted to come over, but you were having some sort of party. Why don't you talk about that?
Okay. Yeah, so he contacted me. Well, we had talked Friday. The party was...
Make sure you use, we don't know nobody's going to know exactly what the dates are, so you're going to have to probably use dates for this. So if you say Friday, was it September 1st? Right. That will help everybody if you could.
Okay. Yes, of course. Yes. So August the 31st was a Friday, and that was when my niece was having a pool party at my house that we had planned, and she had 12 friends coming. So I picked up all the girls. They came out to the house. My brother knew that party was happening. I talked to him a couple of times during that day. Everything was going fine with him during that day. He had asked me for our aunt's phone number and our uncle's phone number. He was just going to call them and touch base with them. And that was it. It was normal conversations. That night, he called me and asked if he could come over or could he sleep on the couch. And I told him, I reminded him about all the girls being there, that it wasn't a good idea. And he said, no problem, sis, I understand. And I asked him what was going on. He said him and Christy were in a fight, and he didn't want to stay there, and she didn't want him there. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, are you going to be able to find him somewhere? He's like, yeah. He didn't go to our mom's house because she was living with someone at the time. She had a boyfriend, and that was new for Donnie. He didn't know if he was okay with all that because that relationship had started while he was in jail, so he didn't know the man at all.
Okay.
It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. So
I didn't know where he was going to go. He said, it was no problem, sis, don't worry about it. And, when he told me that, I knew there's no reason for me to question him that he didn't have it figured out. He had called me again later that night, asking if he could just come by. Was there any food left? He had thought that maybe we had grilled and we had a bunch of food. And I told him no. I said the girls just wanted finger foods. We had, fruit trays and vegetables. I said no, like home cooking food like you're thinking. He's like, oh, that's a bummer. He's like, all right, sis, no big deal. And that was it. That we didn't. It was entertaining the girls. Didn't really think anything about it. He had texted me. So it would have been September the 1st. Now at this point, it was I knew it. So it was like after midnight, I had seen a call from him. It woke me up, and I turned my phone over, and I seen it said Dawn. And with it being after midnight, I was tired. I was exhausted from the day, and I figured it was going to be something that I couldn't help my brother with, and then, he was just pressuring to come stay the night or something.
Yep.
So I didn't answer.
Okay.
So I set the phone back down. When I woke up the next day, there was a text message on my phone from him, and the timestamp was 4:45 a.m., and it said, call you in the morning. And I was like, okay. And then there was another little chat bubble under that from timestamped 9:27 a.m., and it was just the chat bubble. And I didn't think anything of it. Honestly, I think that was the first time I'd ever even seen an empty chat bubble. I didn't know what that meant. But I called his phone, and I didn't get an answer. It was just a voicemail, so I left him a voicemail, just to call me. The girls were all still there. I think moms were picking them up at 1 that day. That would have been September the 1st. That was a Saturday. And we just continued on with things. My nephew had his party that night, Saturday night. Life just kind of continues. It was Labor Day weekend. My girls had their friends coming over. We grilled. Life just went on for us. I didn't think anything about my brother not calling or not hearing from him. It wasn't out of the blue.
Okay.
I didn't think anything until September the 9th.
Wow, full week later.
A week later.
Okay. Let me just allow me to ask you a couple things about that. When you did talk to him, or he texted you or he talked to you, he wanted to come over. So he said that he and Christy were having some issues and he needed somewhere to stay. At that point, did you know where he was? Did it sound like he was driving in his truck? Any idea on that?
No, it did sound like he was driving. And kind of the way our conversation went, it sounded like because he was venting.
Yeah.
Like he had got his stuff from Christy's. They had a huge fight. I just remember him kind of like just venting about, her and her not telling the truth about things, and he was heartbroken. He felt played.
Okay.
So it was clear they had a fight.
Okay.
Either he was leaving or she wanted him to leave. I don't really know exactly, but that was what he was saying.
All right, so he didn't say he was at John Smith's house. He didn't say he was in the parking lot of McDonald's, anything like that. You have no idea where he was at that point.
No, I have no idea.
Okay. All right, so you continue to just live your life, but things maybe start to register to you, like you've already stated, around a week later, September 9th. So that would be a Sunday. What was it that set off the red flags for you? For example, did Christy call you or text you saying, hey, I can't find Donnie, or was it someone else? Was it your mother? What was going on that finally kind of set this all off?
Right. So my mom and I, we had talked about it. Have you heard from Don? And I was like, no. I said, I'm pretty sure he went back to Tennessee because he said, he needed to get with his PO officer. And I know that is a fact because later we found the money order to his PO officer for his fines that he has to pay once a month. So I know that was his state of mind. That was his plan, was to do that. And he was going right back to work. He was leaving with his boss on Monday. And so when I didn't hear from him and Mom didn't hear from him, we just figured, he was on his back to work, on his way back to Tennessee to the job. So we didn't think anything of it until September the 9th. Donnie's girlfriend, she had texted me, and she said, have you heard from Don? And I said, no. And she said, well, do you think that that's odd? And I said, well, not really. He's supposed to be back at work. I didn't think it was until I had went ahead and called her and said, well, I didn't think so until you kind of made it so. Should I be worried? And she's like, well, she said, well, his truck is at Rob's on 34, a body shop at 34, on Highway 34. And I said, okay. I said, I did find that a little odd because the last time he went out of town, he brought his truck to my house. But I didn't really think anything of it either. I thought, well, I don't know. Maybe he just left it at his friend's house,
Right.
And then she started talking about how he thought that something was wrong with the brakes and something was going on. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, if his truck had mechanical issues, then it would make sense for it to leave it there because Rob's lives right next door to a mechanic shop. So I don't know, it made sense. So I didn't really think about it. I did when I went into town. I did see his truck there, and I pulled in and I looked at his truck, and I seen his hard hat and his reflector vest in there, and his boots, and I did think that was kind of odd. So I called my nephew Zach, who talked to Don a lot. We're really close, and he said he hadn't heard from him, and I told him about his truck being there, and he came over, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. So everybody at this point is calling him, texting him on, every which way we can think of, with no response. But my biggest thing, and I had talked to Mom and my husband, like I was talking to everybody, it's like, I don't want to call his PO officer and cause a problem for him if he's just out of pocket. I don't want to make things worse, because something sinister or him being missing was the furthest thing from my mind. The explanation for me was he's just out of pocket. I mean, okay. I knew that he didn't want to go back to jail, so he wouldn't jeopardize himself being out. He is not the type of person to just disappear. That just wasn't my brother's nature. His everything was his family. I mean, he just, that's not something he would do. He didn't go missing for long periods of time without anybody hearing from him. But for me, the overwhelming thing was just not wanting to cause any problems for him if, he was just out of pocket.
All right, what you're gonna have to explain to everybody. What do you mean out of pocket? What does that mean?
So for me, I just mean if he's just on his way to Tennessee or in Tennessee working, and he just can't be reached by phone. That was my thought at the time. And now it sounds naive, but I just didn't want to get him in trouble. And the entire family was on board with that line of thinking as well. Nobody wanted to make the call if he was just at work.
Right. All right. You didn't want to cause problems for him. You didn't want to get him. He might have been doing everything according to the what he should be doing, and there's no reason to raise an issue with his parole officer, and then things get misconstrued, and Donnie ends up in jail again. That's just an example.
Right, because he was. The reason why he was in jail was his 4th DUI, and the judge really wanted to make an example of him and sentenced him to 15 years, and he got out early because of good behavior. And if he had any infractions, he would go back, and that sentence, the remaining sentence, would be imposed. So none of us wanted to be responsible for that, calling, and it just turns up that says, hey, I just lost my phone, or I was in Tennessee, I'm working, nobody wanted to be responsible for that. Okay.
I do have to ask you about this. You've mentioned, of course, he's going to be a prominent person now. Rob, and his last name, you got this guy you mentioned, his name is Rob, but his last name is also Atkins?
Yes, but his last name is spelled A-D.
Okay.
T-K-I-N-S. There is a different spelling.
It's a different spelling, but it sounds the same.
Yes.
All right, so everybody.
My brother's last name is A-T. His is A-D.
All right, everybody, please understand that when we talk about them, last names sound the same, but they're spelled differently. No relation. All right. Just in general, who is Rob Atkins?
I don't know him personally. The only way that I know of him was my husband has an uncle around the same age, in their 50s, and they were friends. So my husband knew of Rob because of that factor, but we never knew him.
All right. Had you ever heard Rob Atkins' name before Donnie went missing?
No.
For example, had Donnie ever said, I'm going to go over to Rob's. I need to go see Rob. Rob's going to work on my truck. Anything like that?
No.
All right. So, in addition, though, the understanding is that it was Christy who first saw Donnie's truck at Rob's. She was the one that told you about it.
Yes.
All right. Did you ever, once again, not wanting to get Donnie in trouble or anything, did you go over there? Like you said, you didn't realize this for a week. Did you go over? Did you speak to Rob? What did he have to say if you spoke to him at that time? Once again, before the police and all the other things start, did you ever have a chance to talk to him?
I did talk to Rob after I called and filed the police report.
You did, after the police report. Okay, and what did Rob have to say in this one-on-one conversation?
He said that, yes, Donnie was staying there the weekend. He asked if he could crash there, and he said he remembers Donnie getting up. He couldn't give us an exact date. He didn't know if that was Saturday or Sunday. He just said he remembered, seeing Donnie getting ready, looking nice, and he just left and went walking.
That's what he said. He looked nice, saying that Donnie had on some of his nicer clothes.
Right.
Or instead of just t-shirt and shorts or something.
Right.
Okay. Any idea how Rob and Donnie even knew each other? Has anybody ever been able to communicate that to you? Because as you kind of already stated, Rob is maybe 20 years older than Donnie, maybe something like that.
Right.
Okay. Any idea how obviously the two didn't go to school together, so what was it?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
The connection I could maybe speculate is maybe from jail. I know that now I know Rob was in and out of jail for different things.
Okay.
But I don't know if I never looked into if they overlapped with any of the times Donnie was in jail.
Very good. That was
I don't know. I don't know if maybe it was just maybe Donnie just met Rob because of he lived right next door to a mechanic shop.
Mm-hmm.
If maybe just that was the connection, maybe, I honestly don't know.
Okay. All right. And should we then understand that Rob never told you how the two knew each other?
No.
Okay. When you spoke to Rob, did he sound concerned? Did it seem to you that he was forthcoming regarding this? Did he not? I mean, was he not a little weirded out that Donnie's truck's there for a week, and I guess he hasn't heard from Donnie either? What can you say about all of that?
No, he didn't seem. He was just, from what I remember, he was just casual. He just said that, him and that girl were fighting. He was fighting a lot with his girlfriend. He needed a place to crash. He said, his stuff's still here if you want to get it. And I was like, well, wait, his stuff's here. What do you mean his stuff? Like, what stuff? And my brother had a 3-drawer plastic dresser container, like the ones you can get from Walmart, that had all his clothes in there and some belongings. And he had, his backpack was there, and my brother's backpack was like a woman's purse to her. It had everything. It's where he kept his wallet. He didn't carry his wallet in his pants. He carried it in his backpack. Everything dear to him, important to him, was in that backpack. So that was there. So for me, that was a red flag for me. That I could never wrap my brain around.
Okay, but just to be clear, it didn't seem that Rob was too bothered that Donnie had taken off in nice clothes, had not come back for a week, even though his truck is there and most of his stuff there. Rob did not seem bothered by that.
He did not, no.
Okay. Once you filed the police report, did the police go and talk to Rob? Does it sound to you like he gave them the same story, or what?
They did give him the same, from what I understand, they did talk to him, and they did give him the same story.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't really look into it that much. I don't know. It's just missing persons cases are just so weird.
Tell me about it.
Especially if they're the family living it. I mean, you don't have any prior knowledge of how, what steps to take, how to proceed, looking back now, of course, there's some things I wish we would have done differently, but,
I know. I'm just asking the question. I'm not trying to guilt you or anything. I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands, the situation here, that you're doing your best, but I think it's going to stick with people that Rob did not seem bothered. He seemed totally fine with the fact that Donnie walked off in nice clothes, not taking anything, leaving his truck there, and hasn't been heard from for a week. He seemed okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Being that Christy was the one who originally alerted you to the truck being over at Rob's, once you went over there and discovered that, of course, Donnie wasn't there, and you talked to Rob and he's not concerned, what did Christy have to say to you, about this? Did she say anything about this fight that they were having and what, the reason he was at Rob's at the first place? What did she have to say, once again, just in that 10 days after Donnie went missing?
It was something about her ex-husband. Donnie said that he felt like somebody was there, and then he seen them sneak out of her bedroom window, that her ex-husband was threatening him and tampered with the brakes on his truck. She was denying all of it. He said that there was someone in the yard. He didn't trust her, and she was, denying all of it to him and to me, and that is what I gather the fight was about. Okay. I don't know if there's any truth to it. That was her telling me. Then later, when I gained access to my brother's phone records and Facebook, I was able to see their conversations between Donnie and Christy, and it did verify that was his concerns. Okay. And she was denying it.
Okay, and we're going to get into those messages. In fact, you've sent me some of those messages, and we're going to talk about them in a bit. All right, so the police are involved. Already, very, very unfortunately, you're already a week behind. He goes missing somewhere, I believe around September 2nd, but here it isn't until September 9th that anybody really realizes that he's missing. And the person who would seemingly be in the best position to know that he's missing, Rob, didn't do anything. He didn't alert Christy. He didn't alert you. He didn't try to, even if he didn't have your phone number or anything, it seems like he didn't do anything, right?
Right.
Okay, very good. All right, moving on. So we have the police involved. Any searches done initially? Being that Rob said that Donnie walked off, were any areas around Rob's place investigated, researched, searched?
Searched. From my understanding, the detective kind of walked through the house and around it, and that was it. They didn't really classify that as a search. I don't even know if it's documented, other than the detective telling me that that's what happened, because I was just adamant about Donnie's. I wasn't worried about the truck. Didn't bother me so much. It was just his backpack, that it was there.
Yeah.
And then later, they did search the area behind Rob's place, but they were classifying it as for the cadets in the academy, like a training exercise.
Yep.
They said it really didn't have anything to do with Donnie, and it was kind of like a wink-wink thing. So, but they didn't find anything. But the area, that particular area, is not far off the Ouachita River, and it's a flood zone, so it's very marshy. It's a lot of acreage, very dense. So, nothing, they didn't find anything.
Okay, so there were searches done, and we're going to talk about the police later when they brought in backhoes and everything else. But initially, this is what was done, and nothing, of course, of Donnie's was found. Nothing.
Right, and that was done September the 25th.
Okay, so now we're talking like 3 weeks after his disappearance at this point. Okay, very good. All right, and just for the record, go through what was left at Rob's place. You talked about this backpack, but was Donnie's wallet there? I think you told me it was, and in fact, there was money in it. Shoes are missing. What can you say was left behind?
Okay, so Donnie's truck was there. Like I said, his work stuff was in the truck, as in his hard hat, the safety vest, his boots. The items that were in Rob's actual residence were that 3-door plastic dresser thing with all Donnie's clothes. There's a couple pairs of shoes and his backpack. His backpack had the contents for his truck keys, his wallet, a t-shirt, deodorant, toothpaste, a toothbrush. I think there was a bottle of water. Yeah.
All right, so pretty much most of the things that he owned were still there.
Right, and in his wallet was the money order for the parole officer in cash. I believe it was $150 in cash and the $75 money order.
All right, so I guess what we can say nice about Rob is that he didn't steal anything from Donnie, being that cash was still in his wallet.
Right.
Okay. All right, so pretty much everything there, but everything that he would normally take to work if he was going on location in another state or whatever were there. And that ends part 1 of my interview with Carmen Spillers, sister of Donnie Atkins. Please now go to part 2, where the interview will be concluded. We have about an hour and 15 minutes to go. Part 2 will also include my summation for Donnie's disappearance. And thank you for listening to this episode of Unfound. This is part 2 of the Donnie Atkins episode. And please remember to support Unfound at Patreon, PayPal, or YouTube. Donald Raye Atkins II, Donnie to those who loved him most, was a 35-year-old from West Monroe, Louisiana. He had recently gotten out of prison, but seemed to finally be on the right track. In the late morning of September 2nd, 2018, Donnie allegedly got dressed in nice clothes and walked out of a friend's home where Donnie had stayed the night before. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Denzel, and this is Unfound. But one thing that was not there was his phone, correct?
Correct.
All right. Anything else that you can tell, as best as you can tell, that is missing? Did you tell me something about maybe some shoes that are missing? Does anybody have any idea if he really did walk off, what shoes he would have been wearing?
The shoes. So I brought my brother clothes. So he had 2 pairs of tennis shoes, his work boots, and there was a brown pair of like dress shoes. So one of the tennis shoes one set of there were 2 pairs of Nike tennis shoes. One they were not at Rob. So I don't know if that means Donnie was wearing them or I don't know.
All right, maybe he could have left them at Christie's. I guess we have a lot of different possibilities there, right?
Right.
Okay.
Possibly.
And given that Rob's story is that Donnie walked off, was Rob able to help you or anybody else describe the shoes that Donnie was wearing?
No, I didn't. The one encounter that I had with Rob, I didn't even think, it never even crossed my mind to ask what Donnie was wearing. Could he describe what he was wearing? And I don't know if the detectives did either. It's not in the report, so I don't know.
Okay, very good. All right, so we have a lot of the stuff. I think people are going to think that maybe there's something odd about Rob's story, given that it was a week before anybody realized that Donnie was missing, despite all his items being there. On the other hand, it doesn't seem that Rob kind of just left things as they were, especially considering that all that cash was there. If there was an opportunity, you'd think, for Rob to be a bad guy, it would have been to take that cash and nobody would have known, but it was still there. So maybe this, kind of goes both ways regarding Rob Atkins. Moving on, we mentioned that Donnie's phone is still missing to this day. What can you say about did they try to ping Donnie's phone? And then we're going to get into these records and the things these conversations that would be on as best we can in general regarding Donnie and Christy. But regarding pings, any information there?
Well, I guess to backtrack just a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
The only other person who knew the location of Donnie's truck for the amount of time would have been Christy, because that was one of the things that she brought it up to me September the 9th, but she had said in the text messages she had been seeing it there every day for the week. And Christy lives on the opposite side of town and works on the opposite side of town than where Donnie's truck was. So it would have been out of her way to even go that direction.
All right. So what you're saying is maybe it was a little too convenient that Christy actually saw Donnie's truck there?
Yes.
Okay.
And to keep tabs on it.
Okay. Is it possible that he maybe just told her, hey, this is where I'm going, and when she didn't hear from him, she kind of went over that direction and just saw that? Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. But so it was not convenient for Christy to see the truck there, but she was the one who told you about it.
Right.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for explaining that. So we don't want to leave the impression that Rob Atkins' place was just right down the street from Christie's. In fact, she had to go at least a little bit out of her way to see this truck.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Regarding the pings now with the phone, any helpful at all?
I guess yes and no. That's kind of one of the things that launched the investigation to where it's primarily focused even to this day. It did ping at Rob's, and then it did ping at a location on May Road, which is about 6 miles from Rob's.
Wow. Okay. To your knowledge, Donnie have any connection to this road, this May Road, 6 miles away? Did he know anybody there? Was he known to walk over there? Any reason for him to be over there?
From my understanding, I guess he did know the lady who owns the house. And it's on the way to my house. And he had said previous time that he had friends on Philpott, which is the crossroads to this road.
Mm-hmm.
So whether he meant actual Philpott or he meant May Road, like if he was just saying I have friends in the area, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That would be one of my guesses.
Okay, so what we're saying is that the phone pinging in this May Road area may be not totally unusual, given that it seems he did know people over there.
Right.
Okay, and we have to remember, Rob said that Donnie was kind of dressed up when he left the house. Isn't that what Rob said?
Yes.
All right, so we might infer that Donnie was going to meet somebody, and it was something that he felt he needed to look good for. Okay, so the ping, any searches done in that area when that information came up of May Road? Any searches ever done over there?
August the 4th of 2019.
All right, so almost a year later.
Yes.
All right, so even though I'm guessing this ping records came out probably in 2018, they didn't take time to go over there and search around until 2019.
Yeah, so I guess yes and no. So they did go to the property, and they had access to the property. They had access to the property in October of 2018, but I really don't know why it took so long for it to become a place of interest for Donnie. In October of 2018 was because of the people at the property. So at this time, the property had gone into foreclosure. There was a lot of criminal activity happening.
Okay.
That was the reason for the police running off, making arrests for people who were there.
Okay. All right, so we get this ping information. Eventually, there was some work done over there, and what Carmen is alluding to is some people have been arrested for Donnie's disappearance, but at this time in 2023, the charges were dropped, and we're certainly going to get into that before we are done here. But I guess what we're saying is we had these pings over in this May Road area, but that really didn't lead to anything.
No. I guess they were relying, at this point in the investigation, the police were relying on the tip line and tips that I was getting through the Facebook page that was created for Donnie's missing persons case, which led to the 5 suspects, which led to May Road.
All right. All I'm asking you is the phone ping there. They didn't find anything over there connected to Robbie's disappearance or to Donnie's disappearance.
Okay, so when they did the search warrant, they brought out cadaver dogs at this time, and that's when the cadaver dogs, there were 4 of them, and they did, 2 of the dogs did hit on what they're trained to do, which is blood or human
decomposition.
Decomposition, yes.
All right.
Yes. But at that time, the property it's 52 acres. The house itself is kind of in the middle of it. and it's the back of the property has a creek, and in that time of year, the floodwaters kind of come in. So they took the dogs out in a boat because there was a small area of the property that was kind of in a bottom area, and that's where the dogs hit, was in the water. Wow. So they marked it, and it took them some time before they came back. I guess they were prepping and getting a game plan ready for the search.
To this point in 2023, despite this ping happening in the area, nothing of Donnie's has been found over there. His phone, any shoes, anything?
No, nothing.
Okay. Let's move on to this. Regarding, we cannot go through all of the exchanges that Donnie and Christy had over texting, like September 1st into September 2nd. But there was a lot of interaction. When you first spoke to Christy about, when she finally let you know about the truck being over at Rob's, did Christy talk to you? Did she tell you, Donnie and I had these texts going back and forth? Did she say anything about any of that?
The text message between her and Donnie?
Yeah.
No, she didn't have anything. I don't think she talked about the truck. She didn't talk about she never asked really where Donnie was. He never really said, so that was never confirmed. And even talking to her the whole time that she was talking with Donnie, she claims that she didn't know where he was.
Mm-hmm. But I guess what I'm saying is, did she tell you about these text messages that went into the morning of September 2nd in which, they were arguing? It's very emotional. Did she pass along any of that to you? Obviously, you have records of it, so obviously, you know about it through Messenger, but did she tell you about it independently?
No, she did not. Her stance with me when I would talk to her about Donnie's disappearance and about their relationship, the way she presented it to me is they were just friends. She was just trying to help him out. She made it sound as if they did not have a relationship. And at the time, wow, I really couldn't, I didn't have a rebuttal with her other than what my brother had told me. He clearly seen her as a girlfriend, and I had met her twice, and they were clearly dating, however they wanted to label it. But she just wanted me to definitely know that they were just friends, that she didn't have time for a relationship. She was focused on her kids. That's the way that she spun it to me. It wasn't until I was able to gain access to my brother's phone records and his Facebook Messenger account that I got a glimpse into their actual personal relationship. Was definitely the polar opposite of how she was perceiving it to me. They were clearly romantically involved. He stayed with her. They talked about, futures together. It was definitely a relationship.
Okay, it wasn't just platonic friends. It was way more than that.
Yes, and I had confronted her about that as well, because I tried every way to come at her as a friend, as a mom, just a sister, just whatever it took just to get her. Because I still think to this day that she holds a key of information that she's just not wanting to come forward about. But I mean, she's still stuck with they were just friends until I confronted her that I had their conversations.
Okay, and how did she react when you showed her those messages? And once again, we're not going to get into all of them. With your permission, Carmen, I would like to at least give the audience at least a sample by posting some screenshots that you've taken of them. Of course, not all of them, but just to give the audience a little flavor of what we're talking about here, with, of course, with your permission. But how did Christy react when you showed her those messages?
She had a blank look on her face. She was a little taken back by it. And then she changed the story that, well, they were, but then they decided to just be friends. Mm-hmm. They were in a relationship, but they decided to just be friends.
Okay. How would you, given he's your brother, he's the one that's missing, how would you describe his emotional state in these messages? How would you describe it?
He's definitely under the influence. As the messages go on, they start off, during the day, very coherent. They make sense. That's good. But then the later the messages go into the wee hours, they're definitely. You feel like you have to translate it somewhat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It just is, I guess, his typing in English gets worse and worse and worse.
It does, yes.
Okay. All right. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. So we have these interactions. She's portraying them one way. The proof is something else. It's always going to make us suspicious in any disappearance when people don't describe, relationship, or what we would say, in a truthful way. Okay. Regarding Christy, your opinion. This is your opinion. Was she helpful in trying to find Donnie? Did she assist? Did she go out and put out flyers? Did she post on her Facebook page anywhere else regarding Donnie's disappearance? Once again, your opinion.
She did share everything that was posted to the Donnie's missing person page. She did want to be a part of the entire investigation. I did not trust her, and I didn't want her that close to Donnie's investigation.
Okay.
I felt like I feel like she knows things, and she volunteered. She was very upfront about volunteering, but I didn't want her there.
Okay, very good. I should ask you this, going back to the phone records. Of course, we know about these. Regarding any text, who did Donnie talk to or text with besides, of course, he called you. He wanted to come over. You couldn't accommodate him for obvious reasons. We know about him having communications with Christy. Any other communications, being that you had got access to his messenger, being that you got access to his phone records, anybody else on those records for September 1st into September 2nd?
No. He had did a meme to everyone, even like he had shared a meme, I think it was Happy Friday or some kind of meme, to everybody on his entire messenger contacts. And I don't know if it was by accident or on purpose, as there was people he had never even talked to since he had created Facebook, and I know that because I went back and, I went through every individual contact and posted Donnie's missing person thing, flyer, and gave a bit of information. If you have any information, contact me. And the majority of the people did within weeks. Some it took months to message back that they hadn't heard from Donnie in 10 years, or
wow.
They just it was. So I don't know if it was something accidental he did or on purpose. I don't know. But okay. No, he wasn't the only person he was in constant communication with those 2 days. That weekend was Christy.
Okay. So this is just an example. Any numbers, for example, on his phone records that you've never been able to identify?
So so the 31st, that was when he had called my aunt, my uncle. He called a couple of friends, his boss. Let's see, after that evening, so starting at after 5 that evening, everything was to Christy.
Okay.
And that would have been August 31st is when that started.
All right. What about
Everything
September 1st?
after.
September 1st would have been Saturday, September 2nd, Sunday. Any numbers that pop out to you that were never identified?
I think there was one I called, and there was, best I could figure, it was a telemarketer, or I have it listed as Blanchard, Louisiana. It was an incoming call.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I ever got any further than that on it.
Okay. Any messages or texts or anything that would have led you to believe that Donnie was planning to meet somebody on Sunday morning? Given that Rob said he walked off wearing nice clothes, anything in any of those messages stating that Donnie was planning to meet somebody that day? Like somebody said, I'm coming over, I'll meet you here, anything like that?
No, I never come across anything like that.
Nothing. And despite you having access to his records, his messenger, etc., the places that people usually would use to do something like that.
Right.
Okay.
No.
All right. Very good. All right. So we got these texts going back and forth between Christy and Donnie. Donnie, as you've already explained, very emotional. Maybe could have been brought on by, his brain being compromised by alcohol or something else. And like I said, hopefully I'll be able to give the people at least a little bit of a sample of that. What was the last text that Donnie sent to Christy? You had said that he had sent you something, of course, that night or that early morning that was just a bubble. It was like a text, but there was no words in it. Did he do the same thing for Christy?
Yes, so it looks like, looking at it right now, on September the 2nd, Christy had called Donnie at 11:37, and then Christy called Don at 12:38. Donnie called Christy at 3:11 a.m.
Wow.
And called again at 3:55 a.m. He had texted at 4:02, it looks like, a.m. You feel better after we talk, and the biggest. He used to say, love you, the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if, he forgot the other part of it. I know you got a lot, rest easy. It's that 407 from him. At 4:41, he texted up.
I'm just asking about the last one. We're going to get probably lost in the forest here if you read everyone. I'm just asking about the last one.
Right. Oh, the last one from Donnie?
Yeah.
Is at 9:27 a.m.
Okay. And is there anything in that text or message, or is it just like what he sent to you, just a bubble?
It's just the chat bubble, which is the same timestamp as mine.
Okay. All right. So they're having these conversations, and the last one was at 9-something a.m. on September 2nd.
Yes.
All right. And going back to Rob for a minute, he said, of course, that Donnie walked off. I don't know if we're supposed to believe that or not, but did he ever give a time that this happened?
Not that I can remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to this. This is phone records, and this is something that I think we discovered together just within this last 3 weeks or something, Carmen, is that it seems that many days after this last sighting, to take September 2nd as the actual disappearance date, many days later, somebody was using his phone to check his email. Is that true? Or his voicemail. Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
Have you gotten any explanation regarding that? Any insight as of the time of this interview? Because it is unusual.
It is unusual, and when I was able to get into Donnie's Facebook page, because the detectives were telling me there's so much red tape to be able to get into Facebook. You know, they needed to supply a subpoena, and Donnie owed such a process. Well, I know my brother well. It wasn't that complicated to figure out his password. So I was able to get into all of his emails, his Facebook, everything by September the 16th. So I immediately, after going through the messages, was like my first thing, because it just felt like maybe that will let me know where he was when he last, conversation, something. After I went through all that, I had given everything that I had found to the detectives. Then I went to, somebody said, well, check his, location, because Facebook keeps up with locations. So I did that, and that's when I discovered that, his phone, or his Facebook anyways, was, active after the fact. I mean, it was active on September the 5th. His Facebook was logged into, and see, I didn't gain access to his Facebook till September the 16th. So then I was looking at the locations, and it also says, what devices were being logged, what devices are logged into his Facebook. I had given that to the police as well. They had asked me what phone he was using. I couldn't identify that, because he had just recently broke a phone and he had gotten a new one, so I didn't know which one that was, because there was an LG Phoenix 3 on his Facebook account, and there's 3 phones on his Facebook account.
Wow.
I didn't know what those were.
Okay.
But the detectives never, they honestly, in my opinion, they didn't really seem to find any of that relevant.
Okay. But regarding just the good old-fashioned cell phone records, it does seem, I mean, it's right on there. You've shown them to me. You've sent me the copies. That his voicemail was getting checked many days after he went missing.
Yes. Yes, it was.
Okay. No calls. I mean, the way I remember it, no calls being, other than that, no texts, no calls being made. Just this periodic checking of voicemail.
Of voicemails, yeah.
Okay.
No one has given me an explanation for that. I don't have an explanation.
Right. And as you and I have talked about, we have to even put it in the context of, well, this can only be happening if, we might think, well, maybe this is just some weird computer thing or something. But it also means that the phone is charged. And as we all know, cell phones these days, given all their capabilities, they don't last that long. But, we're talking a week after, 10 days after is, even further than that, the phone still has a charge and somebody's using it. So seemingly somebody's charging that phone.
Right.
Right. All right. So it's not just the voicemail, reveals more than just one thing of somebody checking his voicemail. It's revealing that somebody is taking the time to charge it as well. Okay.
Right.
Now, as I've already brought up earlier in this interview, and what makes this unsolved disappearance rare is that some people at one point were charged with the death of Donnie. That's the police were thinking the reason he disappeared is because somebody or some people killed him. How did this, but the charges have been dropped by the time, we're doing this interview. How did this all transpire? I don't know if we wanted to get all the names. The names are out there for everybody to see. but there's quite a few people, and it might just get a little too much work for us to keep naming all of these people over and over and over. But I think the listeners need to understand how this all happened, why it happened. What is your best explanation of how this all went down?
My best explanation would be the way it was explained to me was through the tip line, through Ouachita Parish. There's just multiple calls coming in with the same, somewhat of the same story of what had happened to Donnie, but all the same names. All the same names just kept coming up over and over and over again. And that's when the detective told me, it stops being a rumor when there's so many people saying the same thing. At some point, it has to have some truth to it. Okay. So,
and when did this start? Did this start immediately after Donnie went missing, or did it take to the end of 2018? How quickly did this happen? Your recollection?
Definitely the end of 2018, the beginning of 2019.
Okay.
The names started coming in.
Okay. And now, most importantly, was Rob Atkins one of these people?
No.
He was not. All right. So just for the record, Rob Atkins, despite him, of course, admitting that his story is that he saw Donnie walk off, he was not charged with ever anything regarding, at least to this point, Donnie's disappearance.
Correct.
Okay. Your understanding, once again, realizing you have your own life to lead, did Donnie have a connection to any of these people? Did he know these people? Did they run in the same circles? Did they have the same problems that Donnie did? Anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. This group of people were much younger than him. He was never drawn to people that were younger of his age group. Even when he was, younger, he was always drawn to more of the older people. So if he did have a connection to them, I really don't know what it would have been.
Okay. How did you feel about it? How did your family feel about it when these people were finally charged with Donnie's death? How did you feel about it? Did it feel concrete to you at the time? What did you think?
No, we didn't, and the reason being is because we were already told that all they had was circumstantial evidence. We were told in the beginning it probably wouldn't play out. They were just going to their best tactic was to just pin them all against each other and try to get as much answers as they could.
Okay. And I guess what you're saying, so it's multiple people, and in fact, there are a couple young women involved in the charges as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And what you're saying is none of them ever rolled over on each other?
They did not. The closest that the detectives were able to get was they were all there, but nobody pointed any fingers as to actually murdering Donnie, if that's what happened.
Okay. When they were charged and you found out about it and maybe you had a chance to talk to the police or the prosecutor, whoever, did they ever give their theory of the crime, of how Donnie would have run into these people for them to have committed this murder? What was the thinking?
So there was a couple of different stories. One would be the connection with these people and Rob Atkins and Donnie. So it was told to us that two of the suspects were renting a room from Rob Atkins.
I see.
And it was a guy and a girl. They were a couple renting a room from Rob.
Huh.
And so there could have been a jealousy issue with Donnie staying there that weekend.
Okay.
And tempers flared and something transpired at that point.
Sure.
Those same two people are connected to May Road because of friends. One of the suspects lived there on the property. So that's the connection with the May Road, the second location. All of the people all have a connection to both properties. Donnie is really the only one that has a connection to Rob's place through knowing Rob. There was never any connection found with Donnie knowing any of these 5 people other than the circumstances that were in with his disappearance.
All right, so I have to admit, Carmen, the way you're portraying it is this was not something that was very random. They just didn't pick, it just wasn't necessarily a tip line. It was one of these men and women just happened to be at Rob's place staying there, seemingly when Donnie went over there to spend the weekend. And then on top of that, these people, some of them had connections to this May Road location that you've already talked about, in which it seems that Donnie's phone had pinged in that area, correct?
Correct.
All right, so there are some connections here. It's not totally crazy.
No, it's not totally crazy. And the other scenario that was given to us,
please,
with a call coming into the sheriff's department was there was a young woman staying there at the house. She's actually the registered owner of the house. Her uncle was one of the suspects in Donnie's case. He was holding her captive and doing horrible things to her while keeping her drugged. And it was said that my brother Donnie was friends with the young woman, and he was notified about what was going on with her, and he was going to help her and get her out of the house. That was one of the scenarios that were from the detectives that were brought to us. They were letting us know that maybe that is why he went there. He was going to help a friend and try to get her out of a bad situation, and ended up getting caught up in some very sinister things.
Wow. Okay. Of course, this doesn't explain why he would have left his truck at Rob's, right?
Right, exactly.
All right, unless, of course, the truck wasn't running. But just to go back to the phone records, being that you've had a chance to look at Donnie's messenger, at his phone records, etc., any proof that Donnie had any interaction, even if he didn't know him, with any of these people at all, ever?
No, they were not on his messenger at all. I tracked down all the phone numbers on the list to, label them with who they were, and none of those people are on either accounts, his phone or the messenger account.
Okay. How about, do any of these people have any connections to Christy?
Yes, they do.
They do. Please explain.
The young woman who owns the house, the property at May Road, she is friends with Christy. She is also, at that time, or maybe a time before 2018, was in a relationship with Christy's ex-husband.
Wow.
So it's the woman who owned May Road would be the connection.
All right. So once again, a curious coincidence, maybe not a coincidence.
Right.
what are the odds that these tips are coming in, and it just happens to be regarding people who were at Rob's at the time and who have a connection to May Road where Donnie's phone pinged, and the one woman does have a connection to Christy. What are the odds?
Right.
Okay, it sticks out. I'm sure it's going to catch everybody's attention. And of course, this happened in early 2018. How long was it, though, before all of these charges were dropped? How long did that last?
Not long. I believe it was within a few months.
Were you, how did you feel about that when that all, maybe you were hopeful they're charged, maybe somebody roll over on somebody else, but then all the charges get dropped. Can you explain the feeling you had when that happened?
At that point, we were just kind of numb to it all, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It was, even though we were already prepped not to get our hopes up,
Yeah.
it's like we were almost there. I mean, the girls were consistent with, they were all there, they all seen Donnie. It was incredibly frustrating. It was.
But to be truthful, just to be very black and white about this, other than these curious connections, there really was no proof that they ever did run into Donnie that day, right?
Right.
All right. They didn't find any weapons or anything like that. There's no proof that they even knew Donnie. It was just circumstantial that they, some of this information, no reason to think that any of them had any beefs with Donnie, anything like that, right?
Right, yeah, there was no connection found.
All right. So it all gets dropped, and that is the way has stayed since 2019?
Yes.
All right. Has anybody else ever been charged and then the charges dropped since then?
The last ditch effort was, in 2020.
Okay.
I guess to back up, so everyone was brought in at different times. There was a couple of them that were brought in a couple of times in 2019 for Donnie's case, and then in 2020, more of them. There was one last-ditch effort for the DA's office in 2020, which was always told to us was the ringleader. He's an older gentleman in the group. He went by TD. It was just said that they were just all petrified and scared of this one man. He apparently had the power. So the DA's office brought him in on charges unrelated to Donnie's case for the sole purpose to hang the charges that he was being brought up again were carried a life sentence. So they were ultimately giving him this ultimatum of give us information on Donnie's case, where his body is, what had happened, people involved, and we will wipe your slate clean on this charge that you're currently facing. And we went to court for that. It was a month-long process. The man was very visibly upset at me and my family, probably because of what he was going through, what he was facing, but he maintained he didn't know anything.
Okay.
He didn't have anything to do with Donnie's disappearance, with his death, anything. that trial for him ended, finding him guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison.
All right, for things not related to Donnie's disappearance.
No, not related to Donnie's disappearance at all.
Right.
But what that told me and my family is that the question was everything from the beginning wrong pertaining to the investigation of my brother? Because if the one guy everybody was saying is the ringleader and everybody's scared of him, that's the reason why they're not talking. If he wouldn't talk while he was facing a sentence of life imprisonment just to roll on the other people and get a clean slate pertaining to Donnie and this current charge, he never talked.
Yep.
So it just, things just didn't add up at that point.
Okay. You also told me...
we were right back to square one.
Right? I can tell. What about this? A teacher called you. So, I don't know if you knew this teacher originally or something, and she said, talked about a phone call that she got. I don't know, I'm not sure what to make of it, but I'll allow you to tell the story.
Right. So I did receive a phone call. It was a year after Donnie's disappearance. It was a local teacher within the community. She was retired and has lived in another state. I didn't know her, knew nothing of her. She had called to let me know that she had received a phone call from one of her previous students that she had kept in contact with, because she had kind of helped him along the way, and he was very distraught. He was sobbing uncontrollably. She said it took her quite a while for her to be able to calm him down enough to even understand what he was saying.
Wow.
But he was saying he was there and a witness to Donnie being murdered and how they disposed of his body. She couldn't really give me any details because she couldn't really understand him clearly as to what he was saying, because he was just that upset. And she said that she had debated on, a couple of days after that phone call whether or not to even call and reach out and call me, because she didn't really have any information, but it just weighed on her heart to share what she had.
Okay. Did she name the former student's name? Did she give a name?
She did not give a name.
She did not?
She did not.
So this isn't even something that you or the police could follow up on because she wouldn't give a name?
Right.
She
said because he was scared. It was because he was scared, and she said if he called back, she would give his name, but she didn't know where he was. I don't know. Looking back now, I guess I should have been more diligent at pressing for names or information. I don't know what to say. I mean,
okay. We
had followed.
I'll ask you this: did you know this teacher before this ever happened?
No, I did not.
All right, so she just kind of calls you out of the blue.
Right.
All right. Do you since then have you tried to check up on this particular person's reputation and, dare I say, mental health, anything like that? Does this person have in her school district or whatever she is now, does she have a good reputation? What would you say?
I honestly couldn't say.
No idea.
No idea. She was retired. She doesn't even live in the state of Louisiana anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know her, don't know her.
Okay.
At the time, she was just another person with just a outlandish story. I couldn't tell you how many of them I have heard through this whole process.
Right. Yep.
It's been ridiculous.
And it is ridiculous. Yeah, surely it is.
You just don't know what to believe anymore.
Yep.
I don't know.
Nope, it's totally sensible, Carmen. That's the way disappearances are. A lot of crazy stories, but I wanted to bring that one up in particular. But when a person isn't willing to give names, I start to wonder. I think the audience does as well. Regarding all of these people who did get charged and then their charges were dropped, what did Christy have to say about all of this?
I never talked to her again after there was just no more to talk about. She was just adamant she, didn't know anything. I don't know what she thought of it, or I don't know. Mm-hmm. I didn't talk to her.
All right, so once these charges occurred in late 2018 into 2019, you never had a talk with Christy about, hey, what do you think about all this?
No, I did not.
Okay. When was the last time that you spoke to Christy about Donnie's disappearance?
It would have been probably maybe October of 2018.
Wow. So just a month, the last time you spoke to her was like only just a month after he went missing.
Right.
Wow. Okay, what has she done with her life since then? Do you know?
I don't know. No idea. I don't.
Okay, and we have to remember there was a story that Donnie might have had an issue with her ex. Did that go anywhere? And we should make clear that these people who were charged, none of them were Christy's ex. Christy, at least when you spoke to her, back then, did she give you any impression on that?
No, she said that she didn't think he would do anything like that, but maybe she wouldn't put it past him. She just didn't know. I know that the police, the investigators, had brought Christy in multiple times. They brought her ex in. One time I know of. Nothing ever came of it, though, that helped the investigation any.
Okay. Let's move on to this. You've sent me pictures of the police eventually digging. Where was this? I mean, I'm not into construction or anything, but it looked to me like they were going to be building a huge building or something, all the equipment that they had out there. When did this happen? Why did this happen?
So that was at the property on May Road. That happened after the initial search where the cadaver dogs were brought in, and they did hit on what they say was, blood or human decomposition. So that area was flooded, and it was flooded, but flooded as in, at the time, it was probably no more than 4 feet of water and maybe half acre. So they marked it and flagged it, and they needed to get, from my understanding, because that was, I think it was in January of 2019.
Okay.
And then the floodwaters came in, and so they had to wait and get the funding for the rest of the search. Their plan was to, because the floodwaters had already come in at that point, was to get an excavator, workers, volunteers, bridge pilings, bladders, because the plan was to dam off that area and pump out the water so that they could excavate that area that the dogs hit in. So it was a massive undertaking. there had to be, we weren't allowed on the property at that time, so we were looking through the tree, like through the woods, trying to keep up with, see what was going on, because we had a lot of hope that, especially with the cadaver dogs and all that Donnie's remains would be found. There had to be at least 60 to 100 people. There were so many people, vehicles, large equipment, but all their efforts failed because just the back pressure of the floodwaters was just too much. The dam broke and, pretty much washed it all away. So they had to just call it off and then just wait until the floodwaters moved back out, and then they said they would come back. And that took a few months. I monitored the property. Like every week I went there, just watch the water leave. And so that's what we did. We just waited. I kept notifying the detective of the water level every week until we could get back in there, because we were just we just banked on that spot. Like, that just had to be it. That was our holy grail. I mean, that's all we had. That was our hope right there. And then, so we just waited until we were able to get back onto the property. When was that? In August of 2019.
Okay. And
so
it was I hope to be able to show the listeners the pictures. I mean, this was a huge undertaking.
That was a huge undertaking. Yeah, it was huge.
It looked like the Army Corps of Engineers out there building some sort of dam that was going to be, supposed to exist for like 500 years or something. That's the impression it gave me. All in an effort to find anything connected to Donnie.
Right. Well, I mean, they were, with all their information, their investigation, that with the cadaver dogs, and then I guess some tips coming in that was it. That was the spot where they had disposed of Donnie's body, where they had buried him.
Right.
So that failed, and then so for round 2, coming back to the property, that was August 5th of 2019. They brought in a much smaller operation. It was just 5 detectives and 1 small mini X, and we went straight to the spot. My uncle is the one who actually ran the equipment, and with every scoop, it was just everybody was holding their breath. We'd look, and everybody was looking through it to see if there was anything. It was, but hours and hours went by. The hole just kept getting deeper and deeper, wider and wider, and there was nothing. We didn't find anything. So the detective said that was all the funding that they had. They couldn't go any further. At this time, my husband and I had already purchased the property. We did that when we seen it come up for bank foreclosure, and it had already, the cadaver dogs had already hit and saying that that's where some human remains were, and I didn't want to take the risk of losing evidence or that property or the search for my brother's remains. So my husband and I, we purchased the property. So by the time the second search came about, we had already owned it. So once the detective said they couldn't do any more, we had asked if we could continue the search, and they said, well, we can't stop you. It's your property.
That's true.
That's what we did. So that's what we did. We rented equipment, and my uncle flew in from California, and my nephew was there, who's a large equipment operator, and all of us were there, the entire family, my kids included, and we dug for days. We dug probably an acre of land at least. I know we went, because there was, at one time, it was said that at the time of Donnie's disappearance, there was actually a mini excavator that was stolen in the area. So some tips had come in to kind of lead us that way, and the detectives that, maybe they stole the mini X to bury his remains. And, it was deeper than a shovel. So we dug 15 feet.
And to remind everybody regarding this, so you're talking about the May Road location that you actually bought it.
Yes.
Okay, and how, to remind everybody, how far is this from where Rob Atkins lived, where Donnie was?
5-6 miles.
6 miles, okay. And how large is this property that you now own?
It's 52 acres,
wow.
And
oh my goodness.
42 of it is owned by a timber company, and 10 acres in the house is owned by me.
Okay. All right. So that's, if you want to look at that whole property, that's a lot of digging.
Yes.
Okay. Do you are you digging on that property to this day, or have you kind of put that to the side for now, Carmen?
We've kind of put it to the side for now. We have searched. We did a volunteer grid search. We had a bunch of volunteers. We walked the entire 52 acres. We flagged everything that we thought was suspect. We took the track machines in there. Either we hand dug with shovels or the track machine, every spot that looks suspicious. But that's as far as we've gotten. So I don't know if the claims are true and Donnie is actually buried at that property, or maybe he's not.
Okay.
We don't know.
All right. Do you live there then?
No.
Just own it.
Relocated.
Please.
Oh, I do not live there. We actually relocated. My grandma, who's Donnie's biological grandmother from Kansas, she actually lives on the property.
Okay, thank you. Now, one more piece of information I think is very important. Rob Atkins, what happened to him?
He passed away in 2021, I think.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Anything, to your knowledge, anything suspicious about his death?
No. I think he was chronically ill from something. I think he died of natural causes.
All right. So if he knew anything more than what he said about Donnie's disappearance, that information went with him.
It did.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm guessing that was a very disheartening incident as well, knowing that the person who seemingly last saw Donnie is no longer with us. I mean, that had to have affected you too.
Quite honestly,
I always want you to be honest.
Because the detectives and everybody around me was just so uber focused on these 5 suspects and May Road. It's like I had blinders on. I was just focused on that I didn't see the question marks until after you actually pointed them out with Rob.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I knew,
Gotcha.
Donnie stuff was there, and that didn't make sense to me. Like I was always stuck on his backpack and his wallet and his keys and all that, but I didn't take it as far as Rob was the last person to see him. He's got to know more. That didn't.
Okay. Okay. So I guess what we're saying is at the time you were just taking whatever Rob had to say at face value. That at least at the time in 2018, that you just believed his story without questioning it.
Right. I didn't have any reason not to. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Once again, I'm here to, of course, do these interviews and everything, but the listeners know that I try to give my best advice behind the scenes. Of course, I don't know what happened, but it just, as the listeners now know, having listened to 300 episodes, that when somebody, admits that, or has a story that says, yeah, John Smith walked off, and then John Smith's truck and everything else are still at the house for like a week, and this person doesn't seem bothered by this and makes no effort to try to figure out what happened to that person, that's always going, it's always going to get my attention. That's the only reason I brought it up. Very well could be that Rob had nothing to do with this, but it is curious.
It makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. It's when you're in the moment of your family member being a missing person, there's so much emotion behind it. The logical thinking part doesn't really kick in to some point, especially when you're being guided and led by who you trust, which is the detectives who are supposed to know more than you and have some kind of insight in it. That's where you put your faith into. Right. And that's what my mom and I did.
Right. When really, probably, when it comes to disappearances, probably the people in law enforcement involved know as much as you do. Unfortunately. Maybe you've learned that now, but... Yeah, they don't. They just don't have a lot of experience in this area. Okay, so Rob Atkins is deceased. I should ask, whatever happened to Donnie's truck? What happened to it?
He was actually buying it from a friend, so he was making payments on it. So once that friend was made aware and found out about Donnie's disappearance, he had contacted me and about the truck, and I said, I really don't know. It'd probably be best that you just contact the detectives, because I don't know if it's evidence or they need it or what's going on with that. And they released the truck to him 24 hours later.
Okay. Let's move on to this. I think the listeners can already tell, by, the tone of your voice for a lot of this conversation, Carmen, that this is obviously very emotional for you. But maybe you can talk about, for example, your mother, maybe other family members, and how this has affected your family as a whole.
Yeah, it's affected everyone. It's been really tough, just the not knowing, not being able to. I think we've all made peace with the fact that he is deceased. It's just the not being able to lay him to rest, have that final closure. That was something my mom really had a struggle with. It was her only son, her baby.
Yeah.
We actually lost my mom unexpectedly on December 30th of last year. So it's just...
Okay.
And that is something I'm dealing with. I feel like I let her down because I wasn't able to give her closure. But her and my brother are together now, so...
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's not unusual, Carmen.
It's been tough.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Do you have a Facebook page, website, anything like that set up for Donnie's disappearance? If so, why don't you mention it right now?
Yes, it's Missing Persons Donnie Atkins. It's a Facebook page that has a lot of information on there pertaining to his case from the beginning. If anybody wants to look into it, and by agreeing to do this, I just maybe somebody will come across it and can shed some new light on my brother's case.
We should note that Donnie is a junior, right? I see that like the 2 or the Roman numeral 2 beside his name. He is a junior, Donnie Atkins II.
Yes, his sorry.
That's all right.
His real name is Donnie Raye Atkins II.
The second, so he has the exact same name as his father.
It's actually his grandfather.
His grandfather, okay, the second. Okay,
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if anybody is looking into that and they see that, yes, so we just kind of left that out. It's Donnie Atkins II.
Yes.
And why don't you mention that Facebook page one more time for everyone, if you could?
Yes, it's his name was Donald, but he went by Donnie, Donnie.
Yeah.
The Facebook missing person page for him, it's facebook.me/missing Donnie Atkins.
Okay. And you are the administrator there. You started that page. So if anybody sends you any messages, you will get them.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Carmen, any final words before we complete this interview?
I appreciate you taking the time to look into my brother's case and taking the time to make this podcast.
You're very welcome.
It really does mean a lot. You just never want. Sorry.
That's all right. You don't have to. Do not apologize for being emotional. You do not have to apologize, Carmen. Please, don't have to apologize.
You just never want your loved one to be forgotten. And as hard as it is, it is a blessing to have people like you look into families' cases, because it just keeps their case alive and, some interest in it, whether it's those true crimers or people who just, like looking into these type things.
Yeah.
At least it's being talked about, and, he's a discussion. He's not forgotten, and maybe one day there will be closure.
Yeah. I certainly hope this can help. We got there's so many different angles. Especially considering the people were actually charged with this disappearance and all the charges were dropped. We have maybe 4 different groups that we could be. We look Rob by himself. We got this group. We got Christy. We might even be open to something else regarding his disappearance. And then, of course, we can't rule out the idea that maybe Donnie just caused his own disappearance all on his own. I don't think there are any facts, to dispute that, just to be honest. So there's a lot of different angles to this. Like you should know that people being charged and the charges being dropped, somewhat rare. But maybe better that than they go to a trial and they're all found not guilty and then things come out afterwards. And then these people get to walk away scot-free, as what happened recently with the disappearance of Willis Attorney in Arizona, where her stepfather was charged, brought to trial, and it got to the point where the judge just said, you know what, there's no evidence to connect Michael Turney to Alyssa's disappearance. And the case was dismissed, and Michael Turney is now a free man. Even though I think most of the public really does believe that he did do something to Alyssa. So this is something that we want to avoid. So it very well may be that this group did something to Donnie, but better that the charges be dropped and instead of going to trial and being found not guilty, and then that's it. So, you just unfortunately kind of have to just think of it that way.
Yeah, that is a way to look at it.
Yeah. But I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound, Carmen.
Thank you, Ed. I really do appreciate you. I really do. Words can't express my gratitude for you.
Oh, well, you're very welcome, and I appreciate you appearing on this episode. Thanks.
Thank you.
And that was part 2 of my August 4th, 2023 interview with Carmen Spillers, sister of Donnie Atkins. She and I had to fight through my bad voice, leaf blowers, building construction, and a cuckoo clock to bring that long recording to you. So I really thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. Regarding the location where Donnie was last seen, although I did not make a video regarding it, I did take a look at both a satellite view and street view. It's the 2400 block of Jonesboro Road, West Monroe, Louisiana, if you'd like to check it out. In general, there are some thick woods to the west of the location. There is a large body of water, and I know I'm going to destroy this name, but Chenier Lake, which is to the west, if any of you are entertaining a walk-off scenario. Otherwise, there isn't really anything that jumps out at me. Of course, if Bowman can go unfound for 18 months in Santa Monica, California, while lying in a courtyard the whole time, a quarter mile from his Uber destination, then anything seems possible. So what to think overall about Donnie's disappearance? Lots of different ways you could go. Rob did it. But how do you explain him causing Donnie's disappearance, but then Rob also leaving over $100 in Donnie's wallet? Christy caused it, except she was the one who finally let Donnie's family know that she hadn't heard from him. Moreover, the phone records show she tried contacting Donnie over and over that next week. The group that got charged actually really are guilty, except not one of them has ever rolled over on the others, which seems unlikely if they did it. And yes, 2 of them were renting at Rob's place, but Rob was never charged with that group and never said anything about those 2 having any problems with Donnie. Donnie did this all on his own, except for his voicemail being accessed for at least 2 weeks after he was last seen by Rob. In addition, if Donnie walked off in broad daylight on a Sunday, why didn't anyone see him? Yep, no easy answers for us. It seems the prosecution isn't the only group with trials and tribulations regarding Donnie's disappearance. If you'd like to read and hear my in-depth analysis, along with my own theories regarding Donnie's disappearance, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, sign up, and partake in the Unfound blog. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.